Hey y'all, Fred here. Thanks so much for joining me today. We are going to take a look at a couple of replica knives that I picked up on AliExpress. If you're into high-end knives at all, or even the industry in general, you will most likely recognize these right off the bat. These are probably the most popular high-end, maybe mid-tech knives that are out there in the market right now. There are weekly lotteries. People are dying to get into just to be able to buy one of these things at full price, which goes for anywhere from right now $700 to $1,000 for the regular size of these knives, right? Obviously, these are made and designed to look like the Oz Machine Co Roosevelt, affectionately known as Rosies, and these are also affectionately known as Fosies, for fake Rosies. So that's what we've got here. I really just had to see for myself what these were all about. I did miss them out on the first drop that came out on AliExpress, which is just fine with me. Sometimes you wait until the first batch goes out and complaints come in, and hopefully you get a better version the second time around. These are not currently available, I should say that, but I have no doubt, given the popularity of these knives still, that there's probably going to be another drop, if not other vendors coming out in the near future. I am not endorsing or promoting these knives in any way. I will not provide a link to these knives or let you know anything more about where you can find these knives. I am not trying to sell these or promote these in any way. I bought these because I wanted them for my own personal collection, and I thought, as always, I would share my experience with you. As always, before we get started here, if you would go down here below and hit the subscribe notification bell if you're not already subscribed. Thank you if you are. I love all of you guys who always comment regularly on my videos. Always good to hear from you guys and communicate and keep up with what's going on in y'all's knife collecting journey. If you got to leave early, throw me a thumbs up. That definitely helps me out on the YouTube, so thanks so much for that. Let's talk about the box that they came in. Plain Jane, albeit very nice. You know, these are those sealed rubber gasket hard case boxes. There was no paperwork. There was no branding materials of any kind. Obviously, none of the packaging or branding or cards or stickers, nothing like that, that would confuse you in any way that this is not the real deal. And I am actually glad about that, because these are so good that I don't want anybody to have an easier way to fake people out and try to pass one of these off as the real deal. That is not what I'm all about. I absolutely 100% am against trying to sell these in any way to somebody as a counterfeit type of thing. That ain't cool, and I am not about that. I am not selling these knives, just like I don't sell any of my knives. I haven't actually ever sold a single knife, period, at this point in time. Believe it or not, for all the knives I've collected, I give away a heck of a lot, but I don't sell them. But anyhow, that'll make it a little more hard for people to try to pass these off. I do see these on eBay for anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 plus dollars. And it just makes me wonder, y'all, these are so good. How do people know? I mean, unless you have the packaging, you got to be real careful trying to buy one of these on a secondary market. Use a company like Blade Bench or somebody like that who's a reputable dealer, a reputable go-between kind of thing that'll make sure you get what you think you're getting on there. I would not advise trying to buy this off of eBay in any way, because I'm going to bet that some of these are out there on that market. All right, let's do some size comps. Obviously, I have two here. Why two and not just one? Well, I really wanted a couple of different things here. First and foremost, we're going to dive in and talk about all the different specs and differences and features and functionalities. Obviously, I've got a fully skeletonized one. I thought that just looked way too cool, but I did like this pattern as well, the more traditional style of knife. So I just wanted to get one of each. I don't know why. And really, these two, as we'll come to learn in a few minutes, carry very differently. The action is very different on these two. It could almost like two different knives. We'll talk about that in a minute, but for the meantime, let's just use one for our size comparisons. So up here We have the 𝗟𝗏𝗁𝗏, which is a somewhat medium to long size knife, and the regular Benchmade bug out. So you can see this is a very EDC size knife. The size of this knife is one of those things. It can be very deceptive, which is why I want to do a lot of the size comparisons. In videos, to me, it always looks like a much larger knife, and I'll tell you, it carries and uses like a much larger knife than it really is. PM2, Para 3, always the same type of comparisons. You can see it is shorter than both of those knives, right? Although it has a roughly equal, do we look at the cutting length? The actual cutting length is considerably longer. Let's put them this way, and that will make it easier. If I overlap those two blades, you can see how much longer the Rosie Fosie is than that. Let's look at a couple more modern knives. We always look at the 𝗧𝗵𝘁𝗶𝗃𝗲 and this new 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, which to me is an incredibly similar knife. I just did a review on this. If you look at how they designed the squarish handles, the double finger choils, the relatively same size and shape of a blade, different blade hole, a lot of similarities between these two knives, right? Excellent knife. However, the handle on the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is longer than on the Fosie here. The blades are roughly about the same exact size. Fantastic knife, though. That porcupine is definitely going to be on EDC list. All right, let's look at one more set of comparisons here. 𝗥 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, which is same kind of mid-tech level knife, and this is a genuine factor I got from Brian himself, actually. But also a good comparison knife. How popular this was. This is certainly a little bit more expensive, at least than this set of factors, but you get a little bit more of a cutting edge and roughly the same handle size with that nice choke up position, right? So I thought that would be an interesting comparison as well. All right, let's take a bit of a closer look at these. So obviously we have two different sets of scales here. We have the full skeletonized, which I think is very cool, and the I think this is called radial milled, kind of with that atomic, dirty, stone-washed look. I really love that. I came to love that on the 𝗥 as well, which is one of the factors. I will tell you, ordering, and a lot of people tell me when they order stuff from AliExpress, it takes forever, months to get there. I ordered these knives on January 1. New Year's Day, just happened to be browsing the websites and saw, oh my gosh, they just opened up the sale of these things. So I ordered these two right away. I had it by the 16th. On January 16th, 15 days later, just over 2 weeks, and these were in my mailbox. So I don't know if I'm just lucky. I'm in the southeastern United States, North Carolina to be specific. So I don't know if I'm just lucky, but all of my orders, all few of them that I've gotten from AliExpress have all come within 2 to 3 weeks at most. I've never had anything take longer than that. So I know a lot of people have issues with that. I just thought I would share that experience there as well. They do have heavy internal milling, obviously on the solid ones. Let's see if I can maybe get you a better look. So this is the lock bar side you're looking at there. You can see the heavy milling there, as well as heavy milling on both sides of these scales. Leads these to be a very lightweight knife. Oh, we didn't even do our specs. Let's pull down the spec sheets and talk about those real quick so you can see what the sizes are. All right, full open, just a hair over 7 inches total length. You know, it's tough to get the specs on the real Rosie because even on their own website, they give kind of strange specs where they're only measuring from the sharpened portion of the blade all the way back. So the handle isn't really just the titanium. It also includes out part of the blade here because anyhow, that's just how they do it. You've got basically a 3.1-inch blade if you measure to the front of the scales. You've got about a 2.8-inch cutting area. Just be aware of that if you have any laws in your area. The closed length is, mine comes in a little bit more, but again, because they don't measure the closed length to the edge of the titanium. They're measuring it all the way out to the edge of the blade where the blade is sharpened. So it's going to be roughly the same. Blade thickness is 121 thousandths on mine, which is right up the same exact specs as basically the original. These are obviously very thin and slicey blades. We're going to talk about that in a minute too. Handle thickness varies. The thicker ones were 415 thousandths and down to 409 thousandths on the skeletonized. So that came in a little bit thinner than the others, but I don't know what the other ones, the real one, which version they were measuring. They have a lot of different handle patterns on the different Rosies out there. All of them are stone wash blades, which these are too. titanium scales, obviously. The real ones come in a ton of different blades as well. Right now, they're all being produced in Magna Cut. What they say on the website on AliExpress is that this is a 154 cm steel. I don't know if that's true. I haven't been able to independently verify that even on like Reddit groups yet. So if anybody has seen anybody who has actually tested these with XRF to confirm it's at least 154, we can at least get in the ballpark. Then we can try to guess at how good the heat treat was, because we rarely ever get that kind of data out of them. The HRC on the originals, however, you'll see there, are now bumped up to 63 to 64. So they are really, I mean, the real deal. This is another one of those where if you can afford to get a real one, I think it would be worth it. These give you a good sense of, do I like the size, the shape, the style? Does it fit well in my hand? You know, the size in particular, because now there's an XL as well. If it feels good and fits good, I'd buy the real one. If I could afford a real one of these things, by God, I would definitely have bought the real one of these things. The weight obviously will vary. The skeletonized is 2.63 ounces. That is a feather weight. We're down to darn near bug out type weights. The full tie is still only 3.17 ounces. This is a very light, easy, comfortable, no weight to it, easy to carry EDC knife. They all are the frame locks, right? The integral frame locks. Real ones are anywhere from $700 to $1,000. These things cost $79.99 at the time that I purchased them. All right, one final measurement here. Sorry, I'm getting hoarse. Behind the edge, I always try to measure behind the edge. We've got a BTE of about 14,000. So these are definitely thin, nice, slicey blades. And the edge that came with them is really a very good edge as well. We'll look at how sharp they are in just a minute. All right, so now we'll go back to our closer look. We already talked about obvious differences in scales. There's different handle patterns of all different types of milling designs that you can get these in, except not these. The ones on AliExpress did have a plain Jane version. It also had a kind of almost a sunburst radial milled version with a blue anodizing, blue and silver. I wasn't a big fan of that, so these were definitely the two that I wanted. I was able to get my pick out of them. The pocket clip is a milled titanium pocket clip. It is just springy enough for as short it is. Well designed. You know, they took a lot of time getting the Rosie dialed in right. And so easy in and out of the pocket. The ramp is good. The size and shape is good. You do not feel it. I'll see when we get to our cut test, when we get to really the heavy cutting portion, the hard gripping. But I can tell you, just in gripping it this way, I don't feel that pocket clip at all. So they have done a really good job on the pocket clips, easy in and out of the pocket. There's obviously not a lefty version. We can see from this version here that there's a pin. So on the back of the pocket clip, there is one screw. These are all T8s, by the way. And then there's that little hole right there in the corner of that triangle, which must be a pin that comes in to keep the pocket clip from moving. And there is no play at all in that pocket clip. So there you go. That's how it's mounted. However, you can see, obviously, there's no lefty love in this version. Nor is there in this version, nor is there in any version. I actually looked up the real thing, and for some reason, they don't make these in lefty versions. I guess it's just all they can do to keep up with the righty versions. I will tell you, particularly with the skeletonized one, because those ridges give you easy places to hold your fingers for a little bit of grip on that backside, this is very easy to manipulate left-handed. So I've not had any problems with that, opening or closing for the most part. We'll talk about the detent in a minute, but really, you can manipulate both of these left-handed just as easy, right? It's just a light enough, the size is good enough, the scales are grippy enough that there's no problem. I'm not having any issues manipulating this left-handed. So if you are lefty, I don't really think you'll have a problem, although the pocket clip is obviously not reversible. T8 everything hardware, as I mentioned, including even like the lock bar insert, that steel lock bar insert, and over travel stop is also a T8. So nicely done on that. It is a non-captive pivot. You can see you'll need a T8 for both sides. I will tell you, both of these knives, the pivot screws back themselves out really bad. Like this knife, by the end of this review here, if I just sit here and flip it like this, it's already starting to walk a little bit. It'll walk itself over to the right side of the scale, and I'll have to just simply come in and tighten that back up. As I mentioned, both of them did it. However, I Loctited this one, and this one has not budged off of center ever since. And I flipped these a lot. This has had, at least 200 to 300 flips easy since I Loctited it, and this one hasn't moved. So you're just going to need to Loctite those pivot screws. That's just a part of what it is. There's a single stop pin inside down in the bottom there. There's a little bit of blade shouldering right here on the back of the blade where that contacts on the bottom side. The way it contacts is such that it is not going to be, sorry about that, it is not going to be in the way at all. It is contacting right here, basically. So sharpening choil, you got all day long with that big finger choil, no problem there. Well done as far as the stop pins and the ability to sharpen it, and as well as the sharpening choil, the area and space that you have on there. In terms of blade play, assuming you have your pivots tight, there is absolutely no movement left or right. There is no detent lash on either of these knives. However, on this knife, and this knife only, there is a little bit of pivot lash, a little bit back and forth. It's barely there, but it is noticeable. That does not exist at all on this knife. So this begins part of the story, which is the quality of the quality control between these two knives. It leaves a little bit to be desired. There are significant differences that we're going to talk about beyond just the general appearance of them. The first one of which is a little bit of pivot lash. Not a big deal. The skeletonized doesn't have it at all. This thumb hole, I mean, this is why everybody loves the Rosie. This is just one of the most perfect reverse flipping knives there is out there, period. It is easy all day long, perfect placement. You can see I can feel this is starting to loosen up already. You can do it with your thumb, but you do have to flip it out. But the detent is plenty good enough that it's not a problem. So if you are a dedicated thumb person, no problem there. But really, the sweet bread and butter on this thing is the reverse flip right there all day long. Piece of cake. All right, what else? The detent is, like I said, just about perfect. You can hear it click a little bit on both of these, and really it's pretty consistent between both of these. One of the interesting things about this knife, well, you can see even without the light, there are two detent balls. See the two detent balls in there? And that's obviously true to the original as well. All these knives have two detent balls. That means from the first moment you come off that lock bar, you're on a detent ball. So there's no like late detent lockup. It immediately hits that first detent ball, and as it comes around, now it's riding on both and locks into place. The detent, I'm going to say, is great. It's not 100% perfect for me. I think most people will find it to be a phenomenal detent. You can fail this if you try, but you really have to try to short stroke it, almost like intentionally short stroke it. If you just try it all, even with any amount of effort, you're gonna get this thing out almost the whole way every time. There you go. I like really hard, stiff detents. Most people don't. So for me, it could have been a little bit harder. For most people, they're going to say that's the perfect amount of detent, right? Open face ceramic bearings in here. Here's where the other difference really comes between these two knives. So this one is incredibly smooth all the way around, opening and closing. It glides nicely and smoothly. The detent is nice, and when it comes out, I'm trying to see if you can hear that as I'm rocking the blade. This one is rough action. Hopefully you can hear that. For some reason, there's a major difference in the action. So I swapped the bearings. I thought, well, maybe one has bad bearings and the other has good bearings. They're both the same open face ceramic ball bearings, not highest quality, but usually better. And this one sounds smooth as can be. So I swapped the bearings on them. No difference. So then I thought, well, maybe it's those double detent balls in there that we looked at a minute ago. Maybe those are somewhat different on both of them. So I tried to swap that out, only to realize they're actually different. The lock bar insert and over travel stop. The over travel stop is actually shaped differently on the skeletonized than it is on the solid radial, and that makes them unswappable. So I'm not sure if that's what maybe is causing the difference. I can't quite figure it out. The other thing you'll see is the percentage of lockup. So the radial locks up beautifully. I'm going to say that is 40%, easy 30, 40, not quite 50%, just a hair less. But over here on the radial, we are not locked up, but maybe 20%, and that's not enough. There you go. This knife will break out of that. So I've got to, I think, really just move the lock bar. I need to bend that lock bar in a little bit and probably solve that problem. But before I did that, I thought I'd share this video with you. This one at 40% is not, well, I thought, did it break free? No? Let's see. No, it did not. I thought, man, for a second, I thought it broke free. No, it's not. So this one is solid all day long, not breaking free. This one is, but again, I can see because it's just not locked up enough. And that, again, is a quality control difference. I think I can resolve that. I'm not even worried about that because you really have to hit it hard in order to break it free. This is not that kind of a hard use knife with that kind of nice thin slicey blade, right? This is a beautiful EDC blade that's going to do 99% of anything I need a knife to do for me all day long. All right, so talked about that, the detent, the bearings, the smoothness, the difference of sound. I'm going through my notes here, making sure I hit all the good parts. The steel lock bar with over travel, the double detent balls, the blade. So this is supposed to be a 154 cm blade, as we said back at the beginning. There is no particular branding on the blade, which is good because that also matches the original. However, they do have the Oz Machine logo on them in the same place that you will find it on the real knives. They do also have random numbering. So I did see a Reddit group of people who had bought a bunch of these replicas, and they all had different numbers. They were all trying to compare numbers. Some of them were looking for specific numbers. And of the dozen or so people that responded, they all had different unique numbers. So they are putting different numbers on them. That's not a good thing because that then additionally lends these to being potentially counterfeited, and that's not a good thing that we don't want out there, right? The blade itself is excellent. It is a very thin, slicey blade. They have done this top swedge on both sides so that when you look at this knife from this angle, that is as thin as a needle. And that's pretty cool looking to me. It's just as thin as that is on both of these knives. It's just needle-like in its precision. It's going to be obviously a little delicate because of that. This is not something you want to go out prying with. This is not a big hard-use knife. I will tell you, they came a 10 on the redneck sharpness scale. In terms of sharpness out of the box, these things are laser beams. That's the solid. And here's the skeletonized. Man, again, these things are razor sharp, both of them. So, yeehaw for that. That question will be, how long will that last? I don't know. Time will tell. We'll obviously put these through our cut testing and see how well it shows up. The blade centering on both of these did come absolutely dead center perfect. You can see now, as I mentioned earlier, now that I've flipped this a few times, the pivot screw has loosened up. If I continue to flip it, particularly if you flip it thumb flips hard like that, you will find that it will continue to work its way all the way over to that side. So that tells me it's time. Now, the reason I haven't Loctited this one, so I tightened it up, you can see, back to dead center again. All good. Still works like a champ. I got skiffs on the way. I'm putting skiffs in both of these. I'm hoping that overcomes this, kind of bit of a rough, unsmooth action on this knife. The difference in sound quality is what really makes a big difference for me. I love this skeletonized, but there's no sound to it. It almost has a springy boing sound that's not going to come through on this microphone, I know, but when you close it and even when you open it, it just doesn't have the same sound compared to that. The hollow, full titanium scales gives it a very different sound on opening and closing. And I love the sound of knives as well. I think we all do. So there's something about the sound of a knife that adds to how desirable it is. All right, sharpening tool we talked about. Really, let's talk about the ergonomics. These are superior ergonomics. One of the strange things about these, as I mentioned, is the size. When you look at them on a video, it feels like they are a larger knife than they are in hand. So you first get it and you're like, well, that's smaller and lighter than I thought it was going to be. And then you start holding it for a while and you cut some things with it and you begin to think, well, I don't I don't know that I really would want it any larger. I mean, you do have jimping. I didn't mention that. You have nice matched jimping on the back here all the way up to the blade. That is certainly very functional. Not too aggressive, but aggressive enough kind of jimping. The real deal about these knives is that the blade tang fits perfectly into this finger choil. So you have the widest, flattest spot right here where you're putting a lot of your pressure between those two fingers. I mean, you could almost take those fingers off. That's where you're putting a lot of the pressure. Obviously, the back of the blade sits perfectly in your hand. The other thing I didn't mention, ergonomics, is the curvature of these. This is a nice round spine. It is not as square and flat as it first looks until you really start studying it. That's a nice curve which fits beautifully into the palm or the butt of your hand. Your fingers wrap into these choils perfectly. Even if you had, I have a size large glove, even if you had extra large or extra, extra large, you will still have space. Now, this knife is not designed like some other knives. So let me give you an example. The porcupine is designed that you could hold it all the way back here in a 4-finger grip. If you had to do like some deep push cutting and you were worried about that knife slipping and potentially cutting you, if you slip, you could choke all the way back here and do that. This knife would work just fine being held in this position, the rearward position with all 4 fingers. That's not what you're going to do with the Rosie. This is at best, and I'm a size large, just a size large, barely a 4-finger, really 3.5 choked back. I don't think anybody ever will use the knife in that position. It's just too perfectly designed for your finger right up here, which means you're cutting cardboard, right? That cardboard is right up against your finger. You're not at any risk of cutting your finger. There's plenty of space and the blade is curved out, the angle of the choil. So you're not likely going to cut yourself, even if your finger moves around in there. This is made to hold this way. Again, no matter what size of hand you have, you're going to realize, well, although it feels small, it actually doesn't use small. It doesn't carry small. It doesn't feel small when you've got it in hand and you are using it. So it made me wonder, like, do I really want an XL version? Everybody said, well, you know, it would be perfect if it was maybe just an inch bigger, although I think the XL might be even more than an inch bigger. I guess we'll see. Those are coming out soon. We'll see about that when they get here. I think this actually is the right perfect size, despite it being a little bit smaller, as we saw in all of our size comparisons. So it's a tricky thing. It's when you first get it, you look at it and say, oh, it's smaller than I thought. But then the more you hold it, the more you use it, the more it melts into your hand and you realize, I get it. I understand now why so many people have been going nuts over this knife and why they can't keep them in stock there at the old Oz Machine Co shop. And that tells me, yeah, this would be another one of those Grail knives. If you had the money, the action, I'm certain, on the real one is going to be way better than what I've got here. Although I got to tell you, the action on the skeletonized is quite smooth indeed. I mean, this is... I can't imagine it being much smoother. You know, it's not going to be drop shut because this blade is so thin. It's so light. It has so little weight. I think I've seen some real ones that are definitely more drop shut than this. Again, you get a real one, the action on that is going to be so perfectly tuned and beautiful. It probably will be close to drop shut. It might be a little tiny shake shut. It's going to be better than these, but these are not bad. Having said that, let's talk about negatives. Again, inconsistent quality between these two. The poor action on this one, the kind of gritty feeling of this one. We'll see if the skiff blades or the skiff bearings fix that. Unknown steel quality. Is it really 154 cm? What's the heat treat? How long does it last? We'll put it through some cut testing and find out. No left-handed version, although, again, as I have mentioned, this thing is very easy to use left-handed. Both of these are very easy to use left-handed. It just fits comfortably in both hands. It works. Also, a little bit of a delicate tip, but that's also part of the strong point. It is a very thin and slicey knife, which makes it beautiful. I can see why people love it so much. You know, it's a strange mix of being small, yet perfectly sized. I'm disappointed in the inconsistent quality. I wish, you know, that this one had the smoothness of action as the skeletonized one. This thing would have been beyond a home run for me. As it is, I would definitely still carry it. It still works great. You can see It's easy to manipulate. It feels good in the hand. It feels solid in the hand. It is lightweight, perfect EDC size, all the things that you want in a good knife. The skeletonized is perfect, other than the sound quality. It just lacks that solid, echoey, solid clack of the titanium scales. So I'm not recommending these to anyone at all. I'm not making any recommendations. You can't buy them now if you wanted to, although I'm sure they'll be back someday. Hopefully that's helpful and gives you a little bit more insight as to my experience with these two knives. As always, if you would please down below, hit that subscribe notification bell. Give your man a thumbs up. If I did a good job, thumbs down. I'm sure I'll get some of those too. Let me know what you want to see better. Otherwise, I appreciate all you guys and your comments and support. We'll see you on the next video. Take care.